Okay. So I wanted to talk about. I know you like video games, and so do I. And I want to talk about some themes in video games. Since I know we're going to be doing a podcast like the end of the semester, talking about a lot of nerdy things, but I wanted to discuss briefly about a couple of video games. We had talked. You were going to write a paper or something for one of your classes, and I gave you some ideas about some video games that touched into a lot of psychological themes and things with abuse and so on and so forth. And there was this really great video game that was created, and it was called
with the creepy
Lisa,
old man.
Called Lisa. It's a 3-part video game. I believe it's called. The first one's called Lisa. The second one's called Lisa Painful, and then the last one's called Lisa the Joyful, or something like that. And it deals into the theme of the fact that Lisa is the sister who was abused by her father, and the brother was not able to help his sister, and she passed away. And in the first one, called Lisa, she was going through the trauma of being abused, and so it's kind of like a psychedelic type of feeling to the video game.
I had to watch it in the daytime.
Yeah.
Now, it's not that I'm scary,
but the second one, incredible game. Even the score of the game was brilliant. And it had to be post-apocalyptic when he grew up and the world had no more women and it was just men. And him going through the trauma of reliving that over and over in his head. And then one day a girl appears, a little child, a baby girl appears, and he wants to repent for his inability to help his sister through the abuse that she was going through. It was sexual abuse that she was going through. And what he did was, with his friends, like barricade her in the basement or in the house, and didn't want her to be exposed to anybody because he was so deadly afraid that this pure kid will go through the same trauma that his sister went through. And as you can imagine, events transpired where she was taken, or she had left. I can't remember exactly. I think that she left or she was taken. And the whole time he's trying to get her back and fighting off people. And in this world, people are trying to cope with the loss of women, and it's kind of like a Mad Max type of thing. And they're taking drugs called joy. It's similar to this video game called We Happy Few, where that's a post-apocalyptic place, and it's ruined by some war or something that happened, and people are living in poverty. And for them to live their lives better or feel better about their situation, they take pills, and the pills are called joy pills. So it's a very similar idea.
People do that now here in Bakersfield.
People do. Well, it's a direct reflection of like reality imitating life, or life imitating art, rather. I told you before that we cannot imagine things beyond the things that we go through. That's why aliens look like the things that exist in reality, because we cannot imagine things beyond that.
Right.
So anyway, I wanted to talk about this game because it was interesting. I never seen a game so dark. I mean, I've seen games that are dark, like The Cat Lady. Never seen it. It's about, and I was telling you about this game as well. It's about dealing with depression and suicide and feeling like you're alone. And it's a powerful game.
It is very powerful.
Yeah.
That wasn't the game that creeped me out. It was Lucy, and it was that other game.
Lisa.
I'm sorry, Lisa.
Let me get to the
old man.
The third one. Oh, I'll tell you. The third one with Lisa is that Lisa she's a young girl, and it's called Lisa the Joyful. Well, she's called the Joyful because now she's taking pills, the same pills that they were taking to cope. She's taking pills to cope because she's realizing she's the only female, and the only way that they can survive is because she would have to procreate, And there's these crazy scenes where these men are trying to come at her. They're trying to rape her. Mind you, she's a child. She's like at least 14 or 15 years old. Not even, maybe younger than that, much younger, maybe like probably like 10. And she becomes angry and violent. And I'll tell you something. It'd be great to have a discussion about this on the podcast, because when people were playing her, all they kept saying was, why is she being such a bitch?
I found that very interesting.
And she was 10 years old. And the wild part is that there's a scene in there where this guy, she's trying to save this guy who was supposedly her friend. I think his name was Brad or something. And he was about to fall down this pit or something, and she was holding on to the rope. A guy comes behind her who was one of the people who was trying to get at her, right? Comes behind her, and you can choose to let the guy go to fall into the pit, and he may or may not die, or you can hold on to it and the guy does stuff to you. And more often than not, I'm telling you right now, people who were playing it decided to save the guy from falling. They cared more about the guy than they cared about the 10-year-old, and let the 10-year-old, because what happens is that the camera pans off scene, and all you hear is him say like these crazy things about how she felt. Like, oh, it's been such a long time since I touched a woman or whatever. And I commented on one of the videos where people were playing. I said, why is it that she's not valid because she's been abused since she was brought into the world? Men have told her what she had to do, what she couldn't do, but tried to abuse her and rape her. And here's the crazy part. All those games are talking about making a choice and fighting for a woman.
But they're making the same choices that are made in real life, but comfortable with them.
But that's the thing, and that's the point I was getting at with the video game. And then people kept saying, why are you mad at my choice? And I said, that's the thing. You don't understand. The guy was making a point. He made 3 games talking about a choice, the choice to help her or cause her harm. And when you play the girl, as people playing the girl, you still are choosing to help or not help her.
It's almost
to not help her.
It's almost like Nazi Germany and how they did a case study when people were just like, oh, I just did what I was told. You just did what you was told. But what happened when you were offered a choice? Oftentimes when people are offered a choice, they'll still continue to do it even before they're even asked to do it. Why is that? It's just conditioning. It's conditioning of survival.
Thank you. And that's what I was saying. It's a mindset. In society, you're conditioned to think like, oh, I'm going to say. So here's the thing.
Comfortably, Congress, we know, decides every year.
When you make the choice in the game, and this was the part that killed me. When you make the choice in the game, you can either choose to let the guy go or fight the guy. Let the guy fall in the pit. He may or may not die. You don't know. Or you can fight the guy who's trying to molest you. When you choose to fight the guy that molests you, the guy that falls in the pit is still alive. He never died. So all that care they gave to the man, for what? He lived.
But it's also showing citizenship, how women are often seen as second, third-class citizens, if even that, or lesser than a child. But do you want to hear some of the
arguments that people gave? They're like, oh, so I guess dying trumps someone. Her being abused does not trump someone dying.
So what you're doing is you're trying to justify victimizing and victimization, because the young girl was victimized. Over and over and over. And even though the man locked her away trying to protect her, that's still a form of victimization.
Oh, and let me go back to the second game. It was called Lisa the Painful. Okay.
Which is why I couldn't do my paper on this, because it would have just been belligerent in me writing.
Oh, but it would have been. I was like, I'm gonna write a paper on because it's fucking amazing. But if you don't, but. There's a lot more games that are incredible, but
yeah, she had me creeped out with this old man. I was like,
I'm gonna tell you, but listen, you go back to the game, Lisa the Painful, okay? And there's already a precedent set for what's about to happen to this young girl, because when he thinks he finds her, because that whole game he's trying to find her and get her back, and he's finding all these people to get her back, so she doesn't be abused.
And the question,
so she doesn't be abused.
So they say.
Right, but here's the thing. He thinks he finally finds her. Oh, this is crazy. He thinks he finally finds her. He goes to this warehouse. Men are lined up outside to get a turn at this girl. Mind you, this girl is about 10, maybe younger, 8 to 10 years old in that game.
So,
Lisa the Painful, about 10 years old. All these men are lined up to have their opportunity to rape this girl. He goes in there, he fights all these people. Come to find out, they never got her. No, they tied up a poor young man and was taking their turns raping this young man.
It reminds me.
And here's the thing.
It reminds me of several things.
This is the game before you become Lisa the Joyful. So people already understand that no, people are actively trying to rape this young girl.
And so first of all, we're looking at several things. Yeah. First of all, you're asking people to partake both physically and mentally, and it's a physical strain, and it's a mental strain, it's a moral strain, and it's conditioning. If you are able to mentally condition yourself that this isn't a 10-year-old kid, because how these men are coming at her is not the fact that her age. All they see are her attributes, things she has to ask, the things that was taken from them. And you were put here to give us those things back.
That's right.
You're here to serve.
You're
here. You belong to me. You don't have an owner. You're out here. I didn't know what you think that this was, but this ain't it. But I'm going to give you a job. And your job is to do this. Your job is to do that. And if you can't do this job, we're going to find a replacement for you. And 9 times out of 10, it was probably some boy that had feminine features. And even if it wasn't,
pretty much, I mean, that's kind of what they alluded to.
Right.
He was passing enough that they were like, oh, good enough. And you know,
there's an old saying in prison that they'll throw a magazine, they'll bend you over and throw a magazine over your back. And this goes for men in prison. You can be whoever I want you to be.
Right. And so to me, I viewed that scene in several different ways. And there's a lot of interesting things. I suggest people just go out and honestly just
over again.
You can. Yes, there were men lined up.
And for perpetuating this system as though it's okay, and justifying why it's okay. Oh, and giving you free choice and free will. I didn't make you do anything.
No. Here, talk about a definition of free will. It's a video game.
But I'll tell you like this, that's how most programming and conditioning is done.
Do you see how powerful that is, though? Do you see how powerful that is? Free will. When you take the game, that's free will. You're saying that I now am making the choice in this game. You had 2 choices, helper or not helper. And I'm telling you, more often than not, I'm going to say maybe 98% of the time, people chose not to help her.
Just to see what would happen. And it plays
not to see what happened. No, because a lot of justification that people were giving was because she was upset. And I gave a lot of valid reasons why she was upset. I said, 1, she's being objectified. Off top.
Well, she's 10
years old.
This goes to the Me Too movement.
Exactly.
And then this goes
10 years old.
Olympics.
She's 10 years old.
Young, 19
She's 10 years old. And she was exposed to drugs at a very young age because everybody kept trying to come after her and rape her. And I said, no, they don't even know if she can have children. They're not raping her to reproduce. They're raping her because what you said was, what? She's property. You belong to me. I'm going to do what I want. And it's weird to see the people who have free will, which are the players, right? You had free will, and you chose not to help a 10-year-old who was being drugged, who was being abused, and who was being molested, raped, and every other thing you can think.
Didn't ask yourself, is there any more where you came from? Hasn't bothered to do that. It's what can you give me right now? You're here because they service. Because
they hadn't seen another female or a girl or anything like that. But the end of the story is really strange. And when I realized what the end of the story was, I was just like, oh, they went dark. They really went dark. The whole series is dark, but it's such an interesting conversational piece. And
you had said it earlier when you said video games and art and the things we read mimic
That's
what's
right.
going
It
on
mimics
now.
real life.
When you gave the age of the young girl, there's no more different than the age of these young girls that were competing in the Olympics, that were going to this doctor, that were being examined over and over and over and over again. And these young girls were telling their parents, they were telling other people, and they weren't being taken seriously because of the stature of the individual. Well, you chose the Olympics, where you chose to be a star, you chose, and this is the price that you pay for stardom. It's the same thing in Hollywood. It's the same thing even in academia, even at a university, even at a college, whether it's a community college or at a university level, whether it's faculty or staff or even students. You have people, you want certain positions, there are things that you have to give, and guess what? How they trick you is it's your choice, when really you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. There is no choice.
Well, here's the thing. There, you have choices. You have choices.
My choice is not to play.
No. You have choices. They may have the choices that you like. They may be the choices that you like, but you have choices. I'll say this much: if the power scale is imbalanced, I mean, you're in a bad situation, but you have a choice.
Yes, you do.
But here's the thing: that's why the game is so interesting. Is that the way he did was just brilliant. This man. Again, it's called Lisa. It's called Lisa's. It's a Lisa series. Okay. And he gave you the choice. He said, either you can help or you can harm.
Wow.
You can help or you can harm.
And most people chose to harm. So it's like, if purge really did exist, we know what the majority of the people would. If you had one night where you could run buck wild and do whatever you wanted, we know. But on this note, I gotta be out.
We gotta go.
It was fun. It was fun hanging with.
We're gonna do it again.
We're gonna do it again. It was fun hanging with y'all out there. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll be seeing you again.
And we're gonna do a podcast where we talk about a lot of nerdy stuff. We're gonna do it before the end of the fall semester, and wait for us in the springtime. It's about to be on and popping.
On and popping.
Peace, y'all.
Hey.
Black City Podcast. Whoop whoop.
All right.